are the stars, aren't we? The stars that we choose to be. And when we choose to be a shining, bright star, maybe we think, oh, I should have done this a lot earlier. Why didn't I become a bright, shiny star like 20 years ago or 40 years ago or however many years ago? Why did it just happen now? Because everything happens for a reason. And just like this amazing man who's joined us now, who is one of the modern day sages, again, very much like my past, and very many of the speakers decided to give up a corporate career. But this gentleman is just reams and reams above. I'm not saying, okay, Vicky, okay, reams and reams and reams above. I'm going to use the word above the word enlightenment. See, Alan, your inspiration has even taken me off my path. And that doesn't usually happen. I'm never usually lost for words. But after meeting you, and after speaking with people that have actually been mentored by you, and this community that you surround yourself in as well, for what you do in the world, as well as spreading love, inspiration, and transformation with your spiritual MBA, then the new world needs people like Alan. The new world needs people like all the speakers that we've had here on Hit Talks, with the heart and the desire to spread hope, inspiration, transformation, love, and of course, change. Lost words, and I'm sure I've gone over time, so sorry, team. But now, please put Alan to give him his 8 minutes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alan Shelton, and welcome to my little office here. I'm on the big island of Hawaii. It's a beautiful, beautiful day. I thought I'd start out with a little story. I stole it from the West Wing, which was a thing on TV years ago. And it turns out that there was a man, and he had fallen into a hole in an urban city in a big space. And from the bottom of his hole, he could look up, and he could barely see the grate on the sidewalk above, but he could see the people walking by. And he needed help out of the hole. And so what he said, he started to call up above, and he said, help me, can somebody please help me? As he was calling out, it turned out that a priest came by. As a priest came by, he looked down in the hole, and he said, oh yeah, let me help you out. He took out his pen and his paper, and he wrote down a little prayer. Ripped the prayer off of his little slot and threw it down the hole. Now you can imagine the man in the hole. There he sat with this little prayer and thinking to himself, wait a minute, I'm still in the hole. So he started to call out again, and as luck would have it, the next one that came along was a doctor. And the doctor said, he said, help me. The doctor said, no problem. I do this all day long. And he pulled out his prescription pad, and he wrote him out a prescription, and he threw it down in the hole. And the man said, oh my goodness. He says, here I am in the middle of a hole, and I got 2 pieces of paper, a prayer and a prescription. I don't think this is going to get it done. Well, as luck would have it, the third man that he called out to that was walking by is a very close friend of his. He said, help me. I'm in this hole. I need to get out. And all of a sudden his friend said, oh, there you are. And he jumped in the hole. Now that was a really great thing. The only problem was that he looked at it and he said, oh my goodness. He said, now you're in the hole with me. What in the world are we going to do? And his friend looked at him with a big smile, and he says, don't worry about it. I got you covered. He says, you know what? I've been in this hole before, and I know the way out. What I do in life, if everybody wants to know, is I speak to the way out. What is the spiritual journey? You see, the spiritual journey is a function of a mistaken identity. We arrive on this earth, we're beautifully manifested as pure consciousness. And then we're handed a story, and we call that your story identity. And we start to believe that we're things like separate, or that we have autonomous control of our own story. And the reality is that all we simply are conduits for consciousness to express itself through. When you feel the love and the inspiration and all of those wonderful things, that's not Alan doing anything. That's just Alan being animated by consciousness, because that's really all that there is. Now, when I would do my work in the corporate world, what I noticed was that we all thought presence was where the action was. You see, when you were in the presence of a great leader, man or woman, you could feel it. You knew what presence was. That it was right there. And so I began to understand that. And I began to help people actually move towards that. And at a certain point, I ended up in that hole. I call it the seeker's hole, by the way. I repurposed the title of the West Wing story. And I ended up being in such a place that I went off to India and I spent time with the sages. I was with Osho, and then the Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta, Ramesh Balsekar clan. And what I began to recognize is that human development and presence are exactly the same thing in the corporate world as they are in any world. That the spiritual journey was exactly what I had been teaching, only we took it a bit further. Because you see, in the corporate world, we believe we are that story identity. So when we feel presence, we actually think it's me that's doing that, rather than understanding that it's just consciousness living itself through me. And so what I do in today's world and what my life is about is simply hand-holding those folks that have found themselves in this seeker's hole. And they're saying to themselves, I know there's something wrong. What's wrong? And what you find out is that the spiritual journey is about reclaiming the original myth that you really were. You see, Joseph Campbell would talk about that. He would say, hey, listen, when you come, you are a story in consciousness ready to express itself. Now, the part that he didn't talk about, or he did actually, was all of the conditioning that then follows to make you into your story identity. So your original myth, the thing that you came here and you were meant to do, and the original identity, and the original myth and the story identity, those two things don't always match. And when they don't, you become a seeker. You're in the seeker's hole. And so basically, the entirety of what the spiritual journey is about is recognizing that the story that you think you are gets in the way of the story that you really are. And when somebody awakens, we always say, hey, welcome home. You came home. Why? Well, you're not really anything different. You've returned to what you always were and what you were always intended to be. That's the secret to the spiritual journey. And so I spend my time having satsangs. I spend my time, especially with corporate people. The one thing I noticed in my own world, and I've worked for a lot of the big brands. You can see I got my Vans shirt on today, and I've worked for Vans and Nike and Marriott and Boeing and all of these wonderful brand companies, where story is what drives the action. Because you see, a story is a story. And in that world, I know that resources a lot of times are difficult to find. Who speaks about the spiritual journey? You see, the word spiritual itself sometimes has become a word we're afraid to use or we don't use. And so all I've really done is I've taken a lifetime of reputation where people understand that I performed in that world in such a way, and I dare to use the word spiritual, and I dare to use the word journey, and I dare to tell you that if you relax and find yourself in consciousness itself, that it will nest you and it will manifest you in exactly the way that you should and will be manifested. It's the perfect thing, and it's the perfect storm. So remember, all you are is consciousness. The story that lives on top of you, that's interesting. All you really are is a drop-in, you see. At about 2 or 2.5 years old, they told you, oh, this is who you are. And then they told you this is the way to live your story. And we've lived, most of us, a whole lifetime believing that's the case. But underneath that has always, always lived the consciousness that you really are. And when it comes to inspiration, and it comes to all of those things, you can tell my superpower happens to be intensity. So when you talk to me, it's going to be intense. I'm going to be loud. I usually knock furniture over in the room and do all of those things. You see, the original myth story shows up in any way that it can. But what comes with it is love and the recognition that what you are is what everybody else already is as well. All you are is consciousness. I am you. You are me. And that would be my message for today. Thank you, Vicki, for having me. It was a wonderful opportunity. I had to laugh when they asked if I could do this in 8 minutes. I did it. I will see you all later. Bye.
I had to laugh as well. 8 minutes, absolutely perfectly on time. And it's like many people say, how on earth am I going to get what I need to say in 8 minutes? But as we heard from J.W. Wilson earlier on, it's how the brain works. We listen to you for 8 minutes, but really we have just got snippets of wisdom of at least 40 minutes. So thank you so much. A seeker's hole. How many of us watching this have actually felt ourselves or feel that we're in a seeker's hole, seeking something outside of ourselves? Maybe a question to ask. Can we just sit ourselves in the place of love, sit ourselves in a place of awareness? Many questions that we need to ask ourselves. But it all leads back to love, and it all leads back, as Alan said, is that we are one. Togetherness and alliance, as we've been saying throughout the whole of this episode,